All right, in this video we're going over the endocrine structures of the brain, so this one should be pretty quick. And so first we have got the pituitary gland. So it's this little gland that comes down off of the hypothalamus. It's attached to the hypothalamus by this infundibulum or infundibular stalk. It's divided into the anterior and posterior pituitary glands. And the posterior pituitary gland is directly is nervous tissue, and it's directly connected to neurons in the hypothalamus through this infundibular stalk. Whereas the anterior pituitary gland is more glandular tissue, and it's not directly connected to the hypothalamus, but it is still controlled by the hypothalamus through endocrine. The hypothalamus releasing and inhibiting hormones. So we have the hypothalamus up here, right? This is the pituitary gland. And then this guy right down here is the pineal gland, and the pineal gland secretes melatonin. So the hypothalamus is going to secrete a whole bunch of inhibiting and stimulating hormones that are going to stimulate the anterior pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary gland is then going to secrete lots of hormones, and there is a chart in your book to go over all of those hormones. Your posterior pituitary gland, here the hormones are actually created up in the hypothalamus, and then they go down the axons of these nerves, and they're secreted in the posterior pituitary gland. So we have antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin that are going to be secreted from the posterior pituitary gland. Next we have the thyroid and the parathyroid glands. So this is going to be the thyroid gland over here. There would be a right and left lobe, but we're just seeing one right now. So this thyroid gland is going to be important for secreting thyroid hormone as well as calcitonin for calcium regulation. And if we turn this around and look at the back of the thyroid gland over here, you can see these two little purple structures right here. These are actually both parathyroid glands. And so there's probably an average of around 4 parathyroid glands, so 2 on each side, but there may be a few more or a few less. And so this is a parathyroid gland, and this is a parathyroid gland, and remember from 168 that the parathyroid glands are going to secrete parathyroid hormone, which is also important for calcium regulation. All right, the next model we're going to be looking at is a model of the kidney and adrenal glands. So this is going to be the kidney here, and we'll go into that a lot more when we get to the kidney chapter. But sitting right on top of the kidney is the adrenal gland, or as it's sometimes called, the suprarenal gland. And so this adrenal gland is really important endocrine gland that secretes many, many hormones. And so there are 2 major features. So I guess the outside right here, which is A, is going to be the capsule, sort of the outside of the adrenal gland. And then this part listed here is going to be the cortex of the adrenal gland. So here's our cortex of the adrenal gland. And then here we have the medulla of the adrenal gland. And so the outside is the capsule, then we have the cortex of the adrenal gland, and this is the medulla of the adrenal gland. And so these different parts of the adrenal gland are going to be secreting different hormones. And so the medulla of the adrenal gland is going to be important. It is directly stimulated by the sympathetic nervous system to release the catecholamines norepinephrine and epinephrine. And then the cortex is actually going to be consist of 3 zones. So we have GFR, the zona glomerulosa, the zona fasciculata, and the zona reticularis. And so that's going to be from superficial to deep. And so they're going to each secrete different types of hormones. The zona glomerulosa on the top is going to be important in secreting hormones that maintain salt and water balance, like aldosterone. The zona fasciculata in the middle is going to be important in secreting hormones that have to do with like sugar balance and stress response, so cortisol. And then the zona reticularis, which is the deepest portion, is going to be important in secreting hormones that are important in reproduction, like the androgens. And so these are going to be mostly steroid hormones that are secreted from the cortex of the adrenal gland.